Personal responsibility is the foundation upon which every success story is built. It's the moment you stop blaming the weather, your boss, your parents, or the economy, and you start looking in the mirror. It's realizing that your future is not in someone else's hands. It's in yours. The day you take full responsibility for your life is the day you begin to take control of your destiny. Life will present challenges, obstacles, and situations you didn't ask for. But personal responsibility says, I can't control what happens to me, but I can control how I respond. That shift in thinking changes everything. Instead of waiting for the perfect conditions, you start creating them. Instead of hoping someone will save you, you become the one who takes the first step. We all have two choices: make excuses or make progress. Excuses will protect your pride for a moment, but progress will build your future. The person who says, "It's not my fault," has already surrendered their power, but the person who says, "It's my responsibility," has already started, writing a better ending to their story. Responsibility means owning your results, both the wins and the losses. If you fail, learn from it. If you succeed, keep building. This isn't about guilt, it's about growth. When you accept that you are the driver of your own life, you stop waiting for opportunity and start creating it. You stop living by default and start living by design. The truth is, personal responsibility isn't a burden, it's a privilege. It means you have the power to shape your life exactly the way you want it. And when you take that power seriously, you stop wondering if your dreams will happen and start making them happen, because no one else can live your life for you. It's your job, your duty, and your greatest opportunity to take responsibility and make it count. Stop blaming and start owning your life means understanding that the power to change your circumstances begins with the choices you make every single day. Many people spend years pointing fingers at others, convincing themselves that their struggles are because of what someone else did or didn't do. They'll blame their boss for not promoting them, their family for not supporting them, the government for the economy, the weather for their lack of motivation, and the past for holding them back. And yet, blaming never changes anything. The situation remains the same because the responsibility is still in someone else's hands. The moment you hand over responsibility, you also hand over your ability to improve your situation. As long as you're blaming, you're waiting. Waiting for others to change, waiting for circumstances to shift, waiting for luck to arrive. And while you're waiting, life keeps moving on without you. Owning your life means deciding that no matter what's happened to you, no matter what's been unfair, no matter what you didn't deserve, you will still take the wheel and steer your life in the direction you want it to go. It's not about pretending that pain or injustice didn't happen. It's about deciding that you won't let them decide your future. Because here's the truth: life is not fair, and it never will be. Some people will have advantages you never had. Some will face struggles you can't imagine. But fairness isn't the issue. Responsibility is. If you want to go somewhere new, you have to stop waiting for someone else to carry you there and start walking yourself. When you stop blaming, you start seeing possibilities. If the problem is always outside of you, there's nothing you can do but complain. But when you say, "I am responsible for my future," suddenly your mind starts looking for ways to fix things, improve things, and move forward. You start thinking, "What can I do right now to make this better?" That shift is where growth begins. It's the moment you move from being a victim of life to being the author of your life. Blame keeps you in the passenger seat, but ownership puts you behind the wheel. And once you're behind the wheel, you can change direction anytime you want. Sometimes we blame others because it's easier than looking at ourselves. It's easier to say, "They treated me unfairly," than it is to ask, "What could I have done differently?" It's easier to believe that the world is against you than to accept that you might have made choices that led you here. But that comfort is temporary. Deep down, you know that blaming keeps you stuck. Taking ownership is uncomfortable at first because it forces you to face the truth. But the truth, no matter how hard, is the only thing that can set you free. When you accept that you played a part in where you are, you also accept that you can play a part in where you go next. Owning your life doesn't mean you're at fault for everything that's happened. It means you take full control of what happens next. You might not be to blame for being knocked down, but you are responsible for getting back up. You might not have chosen the starting line you were given, but you get to choose how far you run from here. This is the mindset that separates those who stay stuck from those who move forward. It's the difference between living life by default and living life by design. The moment you decide to own your life, you stop asking, "Why? Me?" and you start asking, "What now?" And here's the thing. When you stop blaming, your energy changes. You stop wasting your time justifying, explaining, or complaining, and you start using that same time to plan, act, and improve. The mental space that was once filled with resentment is now open for creativity. The energy that was once spent pointing fingers is now spent building solutions. That's when momentum kicks in. Little by little, you start seeing progress. And as progress grows, so does your belief in your own power. You begin to realize that the biggest limitation you ever had was thinking someone else was in charge of your future. People who own their life inspire others without even trying. When you see someone who has every reason to complain but chooses instead to take responsibility and move forward, it's powerful. It reminds you that you can do the same. Ownership isn't loud or boastful. It's steady and consistent. It's a quiet strength that says, no matter what comes my way, I'm in charge of how I respond, and I will make it work for me. That's the kind of strength that builds confidence, and that confidence opens doors that blaming could never open. You might have heard people say, "It's not my fault," as if that excuses them from action. But here's the truth. Whether it's your fault or not doesn't matter as much as what you're going to do about it. The reality is that the only person who can change your life is you. No one else has the same investment in your future as you do. No one else can feel your dreams the way you feel them. So why give that power away by blaming? Take it back, hold it tight, and use it to build the life you want. That's the essence of stop blaming and start owning your life. It's about reclaiming your power, taking control, and refusing to let anyone else hold the pen that writes your story. You can't control everything, but you can control your response is one of the most powerful truths you can carry with you in life, because the reality is that the world will always be unpredictable. You cannot control the weather. You cannot control the economy. You cannot control the decisions other people make. And you cannot control many of the situations life throws your way. What you can control every single day is how you react to those situations. That choice is yours, and yours alone, and it's the one choice that shapes your future more than anything else. Two people can face the exact same challenge, yet end up with completely different results, simply because of the way they chose to respond. One person allows the challenge to defeat them, while the other uses it as fuel to grow stronger. The difference isn't the challenge, it's the response. When something unexpected or unfair happens, the first instinct for most people is to get upset, complain, or feel hopeless. And that's normal. It's human. But the problem is when you let that first reaction control the rest of your decisions. If your response is to dwell on the problem, to replay it in your mind, to tell everyone how unfair it is, you're feeding the problem instead of finding a solution. If your response is to take a breath, step back, and ask yourself, what's the best thing I can do right now? Then you're feeding the solution instead of the problem. The situation doesn't change instantly, but your control over it begins in that moment of choice. You can think of life like a game where you don't get to choose all the cards you're dealt, but you do get to choose how you play them. Some people get great cards and play them poorly, while others get difficult cards and play them brilliantly. The hand you've been given might not be your fault, but how you play it is always your responsibility. If you spend all your time wishing for different cards, you'll miss the opportunities right in front of you. But if you focus on making the most of what you have, you'll be surprised at how far you can go, even with what looks like a disadvantage. One of the reasons controlling your response is so important is because it changes your perspective. A setback can either be a dead end or a detour depending on how you look at it. If you decide to see it as a dead end, you stop trying. If you see it as a detour, you start looking for another route. Your response determines whether you keep moving or give up. And it's not just about positive thinking, it's about productive action. You might feel frustrated, you might feel disappointed, but you can still choose to take the next step forward instead of standing still. That decision is what separates those who get stuck from those who grow. The truth is, your response often matters more than the event itself. Think about people who've turned failures into stepping stones for success. They didn't do it because their failures were smaller or easier. They did it because they responded differently. They looked at the failure and thought, what can I learn from this? How can I use this to get better? That mindset transforms mistakes into lessons, and lessons into progress. On the other hand, someone who reacts by blaming, quitting, or refusing to adapt will stay exactly where they are, even if the problem was never that big to begin with. The power is never in the event. It's in the response you can't control, the words people say to you, but you can control whether you let those words define you. You can't control whether a door closes in your face, but you can control whether you knock on another one. You can't control how many times life knocks you down, but you can control how many times you get back up. That choice is always available to you, no matter what's happening around you. And the more you practice choosing your response, the stronger you get at it. Over time, it becomes less about reacting emotionally and more about responding intentionally. You start building a habit of looking for the next step instead of getting stuck in the last one. Controlling your response is also about protecting your energy. When you allow circumstances or other people to dictate your mood, you give them power over you. If you let every setback ruin your day, you're handing over your peace of mind to things you can't control. But when you decide that no matter what happens, you'll choose a response that moves you forward, you keep your energy, your focus, and your momentum. That's how you stay in control even when the world feels out of control. It's not about pretending everything is perfect. It's about refusing to let the imperfect things control the direction of your life. The most successful people in any area aren't the ones who never face problems. They're the ones who handle problems differently. They've trained themselves to pause before reacting, to think before speaking, and to act with intention instead of emotion. They don't waste time asking, "Why is this happening to me?" They ask, "What can I do about it?" That's simple. Change in thinking creates entirely different outcomes. Because when you stop fighting reality and start focusing on your response, you become adaptable. And adaptability is one of the greatest strengths you can have in a world that's always changing. There will always be things outside your control, circumstances, events, timing, the actions of others. But there will also always be one thing that belongs entirely to you, your response. That is where your power lives. And the more you take ownership of that, the less you will be thrown off by the things you can't control, and the more progress you will make in the things you can. Excuses delay progress. Responsibility creates. It is a truth that becomes clear the moment you look at the difference between people who achieve their goals and people who only talk about them. Excuses are comfortable, they feel safe, and they allow you to protect your pride when things aren't going the way you want. You can tell yourself and others that the reason you're not where you want to be is because of the economy, because of your upbringing, because you didn't have the right connections, because the timing wasn't right, or because life simply didn't give you a fair chance. And while those things might have elements of truth, the problem is that every time you make an excuse, you give yourself a reason not to take action today. Excuses are like a soft pillow. You can rest on them, but they will never take you anywhere. They keep you in place, and often they move you backwards without you even realizing it. Responsibility, on the other hand, is not as comfortable. It forces you to stand up, look in the mirror, and admit that whether or not something was your fault, it is now your job to do something about it. Taking responsibility means accepting that you have the ability to make changes, and with that ability comes the obligation to use it. Responsibility is active, not passive. It asks you to get up earlier, to work harder, to face challenges you would rather avoid. It doesn't care if the road is rough. It simply says, "This is the road. Now start walking." The reason responsibility creates progress is because it puts you in motion, and motion is the only thing that can move you closer to your goals. Excuses have a way of multiplying. One leads to another, and before long, you've built an entire wall between yourself and your dreams. You can convince yourself that you're being realistic, that you're just waiting for the right moment, that you'll try again when things settle down. But life rarely settles down, and the right moment rarely appears on its own. People who wait for perfect conditions end up waiting forever because there will always be another reason to postpone taking action. Responsibility breaks through that cycle. When you take ownership, you stop asking, "When will the right moment come?" and you start asking, "What can I do with what I have right now?" That shift changes everything because it puts progress in your hands instead of leaving it to chance. One of the biggest dangers of excuses is that they can feel justified. You might truly have been wronged. You might truly have been dealt an unfair hand. You might truly have had obstacles that others didn't. But the danger is in using those truths as a reason to stop moving forward. Life will not pause for your situation to improve. It will keep going, and if you're not moving with it, you're falling behind. Responsibility says, "Yes, it was hard. Yes, it was unfair. But I am still responsible for what I do next." That is the mindset that creates momentum, because it doesn't wait for the world to be fair. It moves forward. Regardless, progress doesn't require perfection. It requires persistence. And persistence only comes when you stop looking for reasons why it can't be done and start looking for ways it can be done. Excuses tell you why something is impossible. Responsibility shows you how to make it possible. This is why two people can be in the same situation, same job, same resources, same challenges, and one will grow while the other stays stuck. The difference isn't luck. It's the choice to stop making excuses and start taking responsibility for results. The one who takes responsibility will look for every opportunity to improve, to adapt, and to find solutions. The one who makes excuses will spend that same time explaining why improvement isn't possible. Another thing about excuses is that they rob you of credibility, both with yourself and with others. Every time you make an excuse instead of taking action, you weaken your own belief that you can handle challenges. You start to believe your own story about why you can't succeed. And the more you believe it, the less effort you put in, which then creates the very outcome you were afraid of. Responsibility works in the opposite way. It builds credibility. Every time you take action, even in small ways, you prove to yourself that you can make progress. And with every bit of progress, your belief in yourself grows stronger, which then fuels even more action. This is how responsibility creates a cycle of growth instead of a cycle of delay. It's important to remember that responsibility doesn't always guarantee instant results, but it always guarantees movement. Even if you make mistakes along the way, you're learning, adjusting, and gaining experience that excuses could never give you. Excuses keep you still, but responsibility keeps you moving, and over time, movement always beats stillness. Even small steps taken consistently will carry you further than the biggest plans that never leave your head. Progress doesn't happen because you thought about it. It happens because you acted on it, and that action begins the moment you stop explaining why you can't and start focusing on how you can. When you choose responsibility over excuses, you also set a powerful example for others. People respect and follow those who own their actions, even in difficult times. You become someone who inspires others not because everything goes perfectly for you, but because you keep moving forward no matter what. And while it's true that Responsibility can be heavy. It also gives you strength. The weight you carry when you own your life is the same weight that builds your ability to handle more, achieve more, and become more. The weight of excuses, on the other hand, only grows heavier the longer you carry it, because it comes with regret and lost time. At the end of the day, excuses feel safe, but they cost you opportunities, and responsibility feels hard, but it rewards you with progress. Every time you're faced with a choice between explaining why you can't or figuring out how you can, remember that the decision you make in that moment will either keep you where you are or move you closer to where you want to be. Own both your successes and your failures is about embracing the truth that everything you've achieved and everything you've missed in life is connected to the choices you've made. It's easy to claim ownership of the victories, the moments, when things went right, when you hit your goals, when people applauded you. Those moments feel good, and they make you proud. So naturally, you want to take credit for them. But the real test of character isn't in owning your successes. It's in owning your failures, too. When things don't go as planned, when you fall short, when you make a wrong decision or miss an opportunity, that's when the temptation to shift blame is strongest. You can point to the circumstances, the market, the people around you, or bad luck, and all of those might have played a part. But the moment you shift the entire weight of responsibility away from yourself, you lose the power to change the outcome next time. Owning your failures doesn't mean tearing yourself down or living in guilt. It means having the courage to face reality without excuses. It's saying to yourself, I made this choice, I took this action, and here's where it led. Now, what can I do differently? This mindset turns a failure from a dead end into a stepping stone. Every mistake carries a lesson, but you only get that lesson if you're willing to admit that the mistake was yours to learn from. The people who grow the fastest are not the ones who never fail. They're the ones who face failure honestly and take the time to understand it. They don't let pride or ego get in the way of progress. They understand that denying responsibility may protect your image for a moment, but accepting it protects your future for a lifetime. The same is true with success. When you succeed, own it completely. Don't brush it off as luck. Don't downplay it as if it just happened by accident. If you worked for it, prepared for it, stayed consistent when it would have been easier to quit, then acknowledge that your effort mattered. Owning your success is just as important as owning your failure because it reinforces the link between your actions and your results. It reminds you that progress is not random, it's built. When you claim your success, you're telling yourself that the hard work you put in made a difference, and that belief fuels even more hard work in the future. Many people are quick to claim their wins, but quick to avoid their losses, and this imbalance slows their growth. If you only take ownership when things go right, you rob yourself of the growth that comes from when things go wrong. Every achievement is proof that you're capable, and every failure is proof that you can improve. When you embrace both sides, you stop fearing failure because you know it's part of the same process that leads to success. You stop hiding from mistakes because you know they don't define you, they refine you. This way of thinking turns life into a constant cycle of learning and improving instead of a cycle of blaming and avoiding. Owning both your successes and failures also builds trust with others. People respect those who take responsibility, not just for the good moments, but for the bad ones too. When you openly acknowledge your role in what went wrong, you show humility. And when you acknowledge your role in what went right, you show confidence. That balance of humility and confidence is what makes people want to work with you, follow you, and believe in you. No one trusts a person who always takes credit when things go well and always points fingers when things go poorly. But when you're consistent in owning both, people know you're someone who stands by your actions no matter the outcome. It's also important to understand that owning your failures doesn't mean owning them forever. Some people confuse responsibility with identity. They fail and then label themselves as failures. That's not ownership, that's surrender. True ownership means you accept that the result happened because of certain actions or decisions, And because it was in your control, you can change it next time. This is a position of strength, not weakness. You're not carrying the failure as a weight that drags you down. You're carrying it as a lesson that lifts you higher next time. It's about using the past as a guide, not as a prison on the other side. Owning your successes doesn't mean becoming arrogant or believing you've arrived. It means recognizing the role you played while still understanding that there's more to learn, more to achieve, and more to do. Success should be celebrated, but not used as a reason to stop growing. When you own your success with gratitude and perspective, it becomes a stepping stone to greater success instead of a final destination. You remind yourself that if your actions created this win, then your actions can create the next one too. Taking ownership of both successes and failures keeps you grounded in reality. You're not living in denial when things go wrong, and you're not overly modest when things go right. You see the direct connection between what you do and what happens as a result. This clarity allows you to make better decisions, set better goals, and move forward with confidence. You don't have to wonder whether you have control over your life. You see proof of it in both the wins you've created and the mistakes you've learned from. It's easy to be proud of the moments when life works out in your favor, but the real growth happens when you can look at the moments that didn't and still say, I own that. It's in those moments that you stop being at the mercy of circumstances and start being the master of your own journey. You learn that you can create success again and again because you understand exactly how it's built, and you can avoid repeating certain failures because you understand exactly how they happened. When you own both, you stop living as a passenger in your own life and start driving it with purpose and direction. Personal responsibility is the key to creating your future because it places the power of your life directly in your hands instead of in the hands of luck, circumstances, or other people. When you fully accept that your choices, your habits, and your actions are what determine the life you live, you stop waiting for someone else to fix things for you. You stop hoping that your situation will magically change. You realize that the direction of your life is shaped by what you do every day. And if you want a different future, you have to start making different decisions right now. This is not about blaming yourself for everything that has happened. It's about claiming the ability to shape what happens next. Your future is not something you stumble into. It's something you build, one choice at a time. Many people spend their lives wishing for a better future but never take the steps to create it. They hope for more money, better relationships, or greater opportunities. Yet their daily actions don't align with those desires. They wait for the perfect time, the right mood, or the ideal conditions before they start. But that waiting often turns into years of missed chances. Personal responsibility cuts through that waiting. It says, if I want something to change, I must be the one to change it. The moment you embrace that mindset, you stop being a passive observer of your life and start being the architect of it. You take control of your time, your energy, and your focus, because you know that every day spent drifting is a day that could have been spent building. When you take personal responsibility for your future, you start to see the connection between your present habits and your long-term results. You understand that the choices you make today are seeds, and those seeds will eventually grow into the life you live tomorrow. If you plant seeds of discipline, persistence, and learning, you will eventually harvest growth, progress, and achievement. If you plant seeds of procrastination, excuses, and blame, you will eventually harvest frustration, regret, and missed opportunities. This cause and effect relationship becomes clear when you stop looking for someone else to change your life and start looking at what you can do differently yourself. Taking responsibility for your future also means letting go of the idea that external events control your destiny. External events can influence your path, but they don't dictate your final destination unless you allow them to. You might face challenges you didn't expect, losses you didn't prepare for, or changes you didn't choose. But personal responsibility says that no matter what happens, you still have the ability to adjust, adapt, and keep moving toward the life you want. It's not about pretending challenges don't exist. It's about refusing to let them be the final word in your story. You cannot always choose the starting point, but you can choose the direction you take from there. When you understand that your future is created by your actions, you start living with more intention. You stop making decisions based solely on short-term comfort and start thinking about long-term consequences. You choose to do what's necessary, even if it's not easy, because you know that ease in the moment often leads to difficulty in the future, while discipline in the moment often leads to freedom later on. This way of thinking changes how you spend your time, how you treat your relationships, how you approach your work, and how you take care of yourself. You stop living in reaction to whatever comes your way and start proactively shaping the life you want to experience. One of the most empowering parts of taking personal responsibility is that it removes the limits you place on yourself. If you believe that your future depends on other people or outside circumstances, you will naturally think small because you're waiting for permission or opportunity to come from somewhere else. But when you understand that you create your own future, you open the door to possibilities you might have never considered. You stop asking, "Can I?" and start asking, "How can I?" You stop being afraid of setbacks because you know you have the ability to start again, adjust your approach, and keep going until you reach your goal. That kind of confidence doesn't come from wishing. It comes from taking responsibility for every step you take. Personal responsibility also keeps you accountable. When you know that your results are directly tied to your own efforts, you hold yourself to a higher standard. You stop blaming others for missed opportunities and start asking yourself what you could have done differently. This self-accountability creates progress because it pushes you to improve instead of waiting for things to improve on their own. You realize that the quality of your future depends on the quality of your decisions today, and you become more careful about where you put your time, your focus, and your energy. Instead of letting distractions control your life, you make conscious choices that align with your goals. It's important to understand that personal responsibility doesn't mean doing everything alone. It means recognizing that you are ultimately in charge of whether or not you use the help, resources, and opportunities available to you. You can have the best advice in the world, but if you don't act on it, it changes nothing. You can have access to the right people, the right tools, and the right environment, but if you don't take responsibility for using them effectively, they won't create results for you. Your future is shaped by what you do with what you have, not just by what you have. That's why two people can be given the same resources and end up in completely different places. One takes responsibility and acts, while the other waits for something more to happen first. The truth is, no one else is going to care about your future as much as you do. People might support you, encourage you, or even help you, but they have their own lives to live and their own futures to build. If you don't take full responsibility for where you're going, you'll end up following someone else's plan instead of your own. Personal responsibility ensures that you remain the one steering your life. It keeps you focused on your own path, even when distractions, temptations, and other people's opinions try to pull you off course. It gives you the clarity to say no to what doesn't align with your goals and the courage to say yes to what does, even if it's difficult or uncertain. When you take personal responsibility for your future, you no longer see yourself as a victim of circumstances. You see yourself as a creator of possibilities. You understand that the only way to guarantee a better tomorrow is to take intentional action today. And while you can't control everything that happens, you can control how you prepare for it, how you respond to it, and how you keep moving toward the life you want to live.